so much for joining us today. I will have the opportunity to introduce our fabulous panel of guests in a moment, but I'll start with myself. My name is Jen Davies, and I'm the Manager of Career Development at the Academic Advising and Career Center. And what that means is not only do I have the pleasure of supervising the fabulous career counselors and career consultants who work with us, I also have the pleasure of facilitating events like these, where I get to introduce you to campus colleagues, which is fabulous. We're here to learn a little bit about what experiential learning is, and I'd actually like to start us off by hearing a little bit from, I'd like to summarize a little bit about what graduates from U of T have had to say about experiential learning. Overall, experiential learning has to do with activities that support what you're learning in the classroom. These could be work-related, these could be a volunteer experience, these could be activities that you complete as part of a research assignment. Experiential learning incorporates any and all of the work that you will do outside the classroom that supports what you're learning inside the classroom. We're going to hear a number of perspectives on how that works at the UTSC campus today. I'll let this video wrap up so we can hear what, or read what our fellow students had to say about experiential learning. I think there's one more after Maureen. No, that was it. All right. All right, so I will let our guests introduce themselves, but just very quickly so you know who we have at the table. We have Janice Patterson, who's the Associate Director for the Center for Teaching and Learning. We have Dr. Andre Sorensen from the Department of Human Geography. They do a great deal of work in experiential learning. We have Julie Witt from Arts, Culture, and Media, where also they do a great deal of experiential learning. We have Nadia Roseman from the Department of Student Life. We have Madiha Ahmed, our own, from the Academic Advising and Career Center. We have Dallas Boyer from Arts and Science Co-op. And we have Carl Chu, who's a fourth-year student in Management Co-op. So thanks so much for joining us today. Without any further ado, what I'd like to do is ask our panelists to introduce themselves and their department and tell us a little bit about what experiential learning means to them, why it's important, what kinds of experiential programming they offer, and how students can access and qualify for those opportunities. Maybe we could start with Janice.
I knew you'd say that. Okay, yes. So as Jen said, my name is Janice Patterson. I'm an Associate Director from the Center for Teaching and Learning, but I'm also the interim coordinator right now for a program called Service Learning and Outreach, and I'll tell you just a bit more about that in a second. I guess for me to describe experiential learning or experiential education, it's really an opportunity, from my perspective, for students to do hands-on learning, have hands-on experiences that bring learning to life in a very tangible way for them, or the things that they're studying to life in a tangible way, such that you're able to make new connections in the learning that you're doing, and new understandings might come together in your head that can lead to new growth and development in your academic studies, your personal life, and things like that. So it's very much hands-on opportunities in my perspective. So the program that Center for Teaching and Learning offers, it's called the Service Learning and Outreach Program, and within that program we offer a credit course, CTL BO3, Introduction to Service Learning, and it's an opportunity for students to get a half credit, but also to connect with either a course that they have taken before, so a placement on campus, or a placement off campus with a community group, and that could include a hospital or some research foundation, something like that. So it's an opportunity for students to take what they're learning in the classroom and perhaps connect it to, as I said, to a placement off campus, or to go back into a class that they've taken and support the learning that happens in that course, again, for students who are taking the course for the first time. So there can be placements all across the departments on on campus, from biology, geography. We've had placements in computer science, all across the departments. And so what students gain is not only a chance to deepen their own understanding of the discipline that they're studying, but it's also an opportunity to connect with students who are, say, taking that course, or people in a particular community group that you find engaging or really interesting to work with. I should also let you know that there is I should have got the acronym right, the National Survey of Student Engagement that talks about service learning as a very high impact activity, in which they're talking about it. So it's an enriching educational experience. So we're very pleased to be able to offer that to you.
City Studies is one of our bigger programs, but I mean they're very much related, because in geography we also have urban geography, which is very similar to City Studies. What we study is what is all of the big changes that are happening in the world, and how to understand them from this perspective of how spatial patterns are changing. So globalization is geography, right? So the changing economic patterns, migration, integration of world economies. In cities, has a lot of what we're studying is housing issues, poverty issues, how communities organize, what is happening in terms of social spatial polarization, which is happening in cities around the world, the separating out of poor people and rich people into different parts of the cities, where places are growing economically, which are not, all those kinds of issues. So we actually have a lot of experiential learning opportunities both in geography and city studies, but I'm just going to talk about city studies first, where we've actually, since I guess about the last 10 years, we've really focused on trying to create opportunities where our students are working with local communities on urban issues, community development issues. We have a whole lot of partners near the UTSC campus, and there's 2 courses in 3rd year that are sort of explicitly designed to be students going out into the community and working. So City Studies CO1, the 3rd year course, is community-based research. The second one is actually a service learning class, CIT CO2, which is called Learning in Community Service, and that we do in cooperation with the East Scarborough Storefront. So our students, it's usually about 24 or 25 in the class, each have a placement with an organization, and it's coordinated through East Scarborough Storefront, because that's a sort of a community agency that delivers services to people in this neighborhood, particularly Kingston, Galloway, Orton Park, but also more broadly, because there was very few services for disadvantaged communities in this community until recently. So a lot of our students have, they've done some really cool projects that they've helped to organize, like some community gardening ones, some summer events, some sort of camping stuff with kids in the neighborhood, the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club. It's a whole range of different things, and on many of those, students have actually continued to work with and volunteer with East Scarborough Storefront afterwards, and have become connected into larger communities. Of course, we have City Studies Co-op, which is, well, I'm going to leave that to Dallas. But that's experiential learning in the sense that students get co-op placements to work terms in which they're actually working and getting paid for jobs that are related to city studies.
So the Department of ACM, or Arts, Culture, and Media, covers a pretty wide range of programs. I'll list them out for you. It's art history, arts management, curatorial studies, media studies, journalism, music culture, new media studies, studio, which is like visual arts, and theater and performance studies. So in a lot of ways they get pooled all together, this sort of cultural arts smorgasbord, but within itself there are very diverse forms of the arts, and so they all take on their own relative dynamics, especially when you start talking about experiential learning. In the department, in ACM, And I guess the meaning of experiential learning to me, experiential learning really is integrated and infused throughout most of those programs. I myself am a graduate of the Theatre and Performance Studies program alongside Arts Management, and both of those programs, you can't write an exam for a theater performance course. There's no paper, there's no pen, there's a blank stage and an audience. And the interesting thing with experiential learning in that form is that you really have to be doing it. You have to be practicing it, you have to be rehearsing it, you have to be actively engaged outside of the book world in order to finally develop your practice. And that is the word and the language that we often use in ACM is, what is your practice? Talking about becoming a painter or a sculptor or a journalist and a writer. You are actively engaged with your field all the time, and it's not sitting in a classroom most of the time. Well, it can be a lot of book work, and it needs to be sometimes, but I'm sure many of you haven't really thought about what a final exam would look like when you're doing your exam in front of a hall of 300 people watching you. It's a very different world from a lot of the places that you see in academia. So it's different, but it's fun, and if you're into it, it's really invigorating. So what I do, I work specifically in ACM Connects. I'm a staff person, and what a lot of my time is spent doing is helping to provide an audience and a platform for our students to showcase their work. They work really hard, just like any other students. Are there any ACM students in the room, I should ask? No, that's okay. So ACM students work really hard practicing and developing their practice all year long. The nice thing is the best way to experience the arts and as an artist is to have somebody, an audience, to receive it. So I'm tasked with helping to develop that audience for student concerts, for exhibitions, for drama productions, but throughout the year we also have other forms of experiential education in the classroom. We do artist talks and bring in practicing artists into the classroom to do workshops and talk about what it means to be an artist and what their work looks like, or what the arts field is like to be a part of, because it is a real, can be an interesting place.
So what skills can students gain from these experiential learning opportunities, and how are these skills applicable to employment or further education?
Some of the testimonials that we've had from students who've taken the CTL B03 course, and I pulled out some of the wording that they use. One person talked about being able to sort of polish vital skills in the placement that they were doing, and they specified things like public speaking, networking, communication, doing poster presentations, doing some fundraising and some marketing. So a whole range of different things, and obviously that's going to vary depending on what type of a placement that the student is in. But they use those words, being able to polish some vital skills. One student learned to be more proactive in what they were doing, gaining as much experience as they could as a student, help them to achieve greater goals in their studies in science. So they learned to be more proactive. Networking, as I think was mentioned here as well, with placements in the community or with instructors, in a number of cases led to other opportunities, whether it was becoming a TA or being able at some point getting references for graduate school. Just being able to network and make those connections was really valuable. And of course, having new experiences, which, as we talked about, leading to new growth, to new understanding, being able to deepen the knowledge, connecting what was happening in the placement with the academic work students were doing. That was something that they really valued. Just to summarize, that students really felt taking CTL BO3, the Introduction to Service Learning, those experiences really did have an influence on their career choices, gave them experiences that led to other opportunities. Many of them have gone on to graduate school in a wide variety of situations, but not all of them. Some of them have gone on to be, to be teachers as well and things like that. So it's not always about going to graduate school, but the service learning can certainly, allow students to confirm some of the ideas they have about their careers, or to realize, whoa, no, that's not what I want to do. So and that's valuable as well, to know what you don't want to do. So there are definite skills and things that students can gain from the service learning opportunities, just like many of these other things, and it really can make a difference on the further career choices, education choices that you make.
So there's another pair of courses in City Studies that we started 2 years ago. Now it's the second time City Studies DO6. So it's two courses, DO5 and DO6. Fourth year courses, they're called Workshop 1 and Workshop 2. So what those two courses teach students is how to manage decision processes and consultation processes and collaborative decision-making processes. So in city planning, this is now a huge area of work because, in a city like Toronto, but this is happening everywhere around the world, there are billions of dollars of investments being put into building new buildings. And if you just go anywhere in Toronto, this is happening. Anytime that happens, there's a consultation process because there's already people living nearby, and it's actually required in city planning laws to actually consult. But also all kinds of things like new pipelines, new railways, new transit investments. They're required through environmental assessment and environmental, what are they called? Environmental approval processes to consult with local communities. But public and private investments. So one of the biggest things that city planners do is actually organize those kinds of participatory consultation processes where communities are engaged. And it could be it's not just responding to new investments, it's also often sitting down with a group and saying, hey, look, we've got this new initiative. What are the priorities of the groups involved? And so it's actually it's an interesting skill that's incredibly transferable. And we've found that several of the students who took the course, some of them just taking it now, but who took the course a year and a half ago, the first time we offered it, are actually working now doing these kind of public consultation processes. And they said, wow, this is actually just an incredibly important skill to be able to start out with a group of 20 or 30 people and through a process of discussion arrive at some sort of agreement about what's the priorities or what do people think. So that's actually, in those two courses, that's what they're learning. They're managing decision processes and community consultation processes. In the class, they actually there's both mock ones where they're doing consultations amongst themselves, but they actually also did participate in a bunch of City of Toronto and Province of Ontario consultations where they're actually participating in those kinds of exercises.
In the CTL BO3 Introduction to Service Learning course, we talk a lot about reflection. Students get a number of opportunities to practice writing reflective statements. And we talk about sort of critical reflective thought, creating new meaning out of an experience that leads to growth and the ability to take sort of informed action. So, one of the purposes of reflection is to make a deeper meaning out of that experience and inform subsequent actions or activities. So one skill that we teach students in the course to be able to write reflective statements is to think of it as what, so what, and now what. So what is just a brief description of the experience, the situation, the thing that's on your mind in that placement. The so what is, well, what do you think that, what do you think happened? And what do you do with that? And then the now what is, okay, what am I going to do with this? What new actions, what new steps? And the example I could use just very briefly is, we had a student who, talked about, in their psychology classes, the professor talked about different tests that they used in psychology clinics and in different situations, and just described those briefly. And what the student learned. So that's the what. When I was in my placement, we used these tests, the psychology tests. The so what was, well, I learned about those in my class, and now we're using them in the field. How interesting. And the now what is, I'm going to go back and look at that information in the textbook or the materials that I got from the course about those tests, because we talked about them the first time and I kind of dismissed them. Well, I'm never going to need to know this, right? And so being able to make that connection, having an experience, what's the meaning of this, and then leading to some action. That's kind of what reflection is about, is being able to make meaning and have some ideas or some steps about what comes after that. And really, reflection allows students, as we talk about in the class, to integrate new knowledge into their existing knowledge set or their growing knowledge set, to make new connections between pieces of information, new interpretations of that information, and being able to sort of monitor and assess what they're learning, how that activity really feeds into their own scholarship and academic career. And as you pointed out, personal life, personal situations, and all of that, and that's a key component as well. So reflection is a really interesting topic. It's not a traditional form of writing that a lot of students are familiar with. So sometimes it can be challenging, but I think ultimately it's really a rewarding skill for students to be able to learn, and applicable to so many other courses, personal life as well.